The African diaspora represents one of the continent's greatest untapped assets, not only through the billions of dollars in annual remittances, but also in the wealth of knowledge, skills, and global networks. It is estimated that around 350 million Africans of diverse skill sets currently live and work outside the continent. Yet Africa is short of this much-needed human capital that can enable it to convert its huge potential into prosperity. This week on the program, we ask, what stops Africans in the diaspora from returning home? I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Well, joining me now to unpack why Africans choose to remain abroad are from Virginia in the U.S., Frank Taka-Ebang, linguist and international consultant. He's a Gabonese based in the U.S. From London, Agnes Gitau, managing partner at GBS Africa, focusing on economic and political risk. She's a Kenyan based in the United Kingdom. And with me here in studio, Professor Dominic Mwenja, chairman of the Central Bank of Kenya Pension Fund and CEO of Mirama International Foundation. Welcome everyone to the program, and thank you for being a part of this discussion. Frank, let me start off with you with this, because the African diaspora numbers are approximately 350 million people. That is a huge number of Africans out there. What is the potential, both economic or political contribution, that these Africans can make in the diaspora, first to the continent and also on the global stage?
I think the question, if not the dilemma about the African diaspora, it's a powerful and important question. We have to look into what makes the fabrics of the African diaspora in general before looking into what sort of contributions the diaspora can make. But, you know, in a nutshell, we have to look at it in terms of partners, right? Africans in the diaspora are doctors, lawyers, you name it, all types of positions are available across the African diaspora. So we have to look into what is it that is Africans in the diaspora are doing that can be an added value to the continent back home. These are highly trained individuals, and I think the continent in general is to gain of having the African diaspora as a business partner, because in that diaspora you have people with highly advanced education and experiences that the continent can definitely use.
Professor Mwenja, let me come to you here. Based on your experiences and based on those numbers of Africans in the diaspora, 350 million of them, are they willing to return to the continent?
I think it's yes and no, depending on what you're looking at. Because when we go out there, I spent about 30-some years in the U.S. When you go out there, what you want to do is to be successful. You go to school, you finish your education. From there, you get a job or you start a business. So once you have reached a certain level of affluence, you might start having that feeling that I need to go back home and see what I can be able to help. And many Africans are actually willing to go back, like myself. I reached the pinnacle of my career, being a university president for about 7 to 8 years. Then after that, it was, where else do I go? The next thing I need to do is to go back home and make a contribution as much as I can. But not everybody has reached the level that I had reached. And therefore, the others will have to depend on the economic well-being, whether they want to come back and make an investment. The first reason why most people go to these other countries, US, Europe, or Asia, wherever they go, is because they want a better life. Some of them are going to school, like I went to school, and a lot of people have gone to school. And so you go, you finish your education, you get a job, you become successful, you have a career. Then over and above that, some of us go into business. So you become successful in business, you become successful in the work that you're doing. Now, at some point, you have to look at, why am I continuing to stay here while I can make a contribution back home? Or there are more opportunities back home for me to make an investment. Several things might hold you back. Number one is family ties. Some people are married, they have children, they have their social networks on the other side. That's number one. Number two, if you don't have enough for you to settle back home, there's a tendency for people to be afraid of returning. And especially so when the job opportunities are not as many on the African continent as they would on the other side. So people, we have that hesitation to come back.
Right.
Number three is the economics of movement back home, infrastructure, healthcare, social security, things that work on the other side, and you're afraid when you come on this side they're not going to work. And I have heard some people here in Kenya, some of my friends that I went with me in the early 80s, right. Some of them have come back, and some of them are left. And they have left because things are just not working the way they are supposed to work. And therefore, the economic structure of the African countries sometimes can be discouraging for people to come back after they've spent successful lives on the other side.
So Agnes, let me come to you here, because there are, of course, some, opportunities on the continent for those willing to return home. But what do you see from where you are? What are the potential opportunities for those wishing to return?
As you note, our continent has grown tremendously. There's been incredible policies around economic reforms as well as political reforms. And these reforms attract most of us in the diaspora to come and participate mostly in the economic activity, but as well as political activities. We've seen an example is Kenya, where in 2010, with the new constitution, which is no longer new, where we introduced the dual citizenship. What this did, it encouraged a lot of Kenyans in the diaspora to come back and participate, and to also, it gave them a bit of confidence that yes, now as dual nationals, they can participate both economically, but also contribute in the political development of the country. Again, our economies, as you notice, right, in the last decade, most of African economies have recorded huge economic growth, and these has also attract foreign investment. And a lot of African diaspora also have capacity to invest. So we've seen a lot of tech startups, we've seen a lot of diasporans pooling their resources together and coming to invest in sectors like healthcare, real estate, which has always been very popular amongst the African diaspora. So there are huge opportunities. And what I think as a Kenyan, and what I've seen from the Kenyan government, Kenyan administration of the last decade has been to really give the diasporans the confidence that when they invest back at home, that the investment is secure, but also that there is also security when they return home.
Frank, I want to rope you in here first, and we're hearing a lot about how the diasporians can influence both abroad, in terms of relations, and also locally. And when you're considering about coming back, a lot of African countries are at different levels of development. What do you see as the biggest disincentive for those considering a return?
There has to be reforms from the standpoint of African governments to prepare and set the path for Africans who wish to return back home to do so in a smoothly manner. But I also believe the approach is wrong. Today, we shouldn't be thinking of African diaspora in terms of a physical return of Africans back home. I do believe that in a highly connected and digital world, right, we need to look at the African diaspora as a partner that will enable a transfer of resources. Why do I say that? These Africans in the US, the UK, you name it, wherever they are, these are people that well established in their communities, people with businesses, people with connections, people with strong capital who are established in these environments. I think it's up to the African continent to look at them as connecting bridges that are strong, reliable, and efficient, to have these resources coming to Africa. And the way we can do that, right, has to start with eliminating the policy gaps. Now, to me, this is something that will lead to understanding who are the people in the African diaspora, what are they doing, and how is it that Gabon can leverage that diaspora, to the benefit of the country.
Right. So we conducted an online survey with our viewers, and we asked what is stopping Africans in the diaspora from returning home. And I just want to sample some of the responses. I mean, it ranged from low technology in Africa, making it difficult to practice what we learned abroad. And one viewer actually said, there is no heaven and hell in the sky. Heaven is found in the United States, and hell is found in Africa. Professor Mwenje, let me start with you. How would you respond to that?
There are there are many reasons why somebody would feel like low technology and all that. It's getting people not to come back. Others who say this is a fantastic continent, it's a beautiful continent, and all that. But there's so many other reasons why some people would actually say, I don't want to go back. Actually, last night I was just talking to one of my friends. He's been in the US about almost 40 years now. And I was asking, are you coming back? And he said, no. For him, everything that he looks at is in terms of economic stability, the macroeconomic environment, which encourages investment, and also the political stability and all those other things that have to do with his social life. That's one person. Another person will feel, when I come back, I will not get opportunity in my area of specialization. That's another reason why they will not come back. And I go back to an example, and this is hopefully what African governments can be able to do. I'm glad Gabon is working on something that would allow the Africans to feel they're actually needed back home. In 1967, President Park of South Korea, that's the time that we used to compare South Korea with many African countries. What he did from 1967, he had what we call an intentional reverse brain drain. That's when he realized that South Korea cannot be able to take off economically until the expertise that's residing within the South Koreans that is in these other countries, in Europe, in Japan, and in the US. We need to go there, go to MIT and the other big institutions where they're professors, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're professionals, and encourage them to come back. What he heard from the people was, I'm at MIT, but we don't have an MIT back in South Korea. So he told them, fine, we'll do the Korea Institute of Technology, where you can come and do everything that you need to do, everything that you've been doing, and therefore create an environment that encourages you to come and give back what you have learned in other countries, and do that knowing that you're helping your fellow folks. Now, within 25 years, Korea was a developed country. 25. That's one of the Asian tigers we used to have in the 1980s. We need to have Africans who are highly trained with a different mindset of doing business to come back to Africa and start what I call cross-fertilization of ideation, where you are used to a certain level of clarity when you are in another country. When you come back and you mix with your Kenyan professional, the Gabonese professionals, the Nigerian professionals, the Tanzanian professionals, you are able to come up with ideas that have worked in other countries, and you can be able to come and implement those in your own country.
So, Frank, I want to get your view here as well on that statement from one diasporian that, there is no hell or heaven in the sky. Heaven is found in the US and hell is in Africa. Is that still a big perception with diasporians?
Yeah, well, I don't believe, I certainly would not agree that this would be a case. No, absolutely not. I do believe that when it comes to the United States, for instance, my personal experience is such as the United States did a very great job in selling a beautiful dream, right? Selling an image, selling something people can look at and truly, relate to. And this really brings up what my colleague Agnes talked about, right? Why do people actually leave the continent? People leave the continent in search of something better, better opportunities, a better lifestyle, right? And America lets you see that. And this is what Africa ought to do right now. It has nothing to do with hell or heaven back. No, I truly believe it has to be about a country leveraging its resources, its potential ability to provide a good living condition and livelihoods to its people. And once you have that established, people will go back home, right? The climate in the United States right now is actually prompting Africans, a lot of immigrants, looking into what we can do back home. But again, we are established where we live that, and we need to make sure that by transferring those resources, they are safe and they are secured. Yeah.
Right. So, Agnes, are there countries in Africa where citizens are more willing to return than others? I mean, what are the motivations for the return to those countries?
Thank you, Beatrice. And before I respond to you, allow me to respond to your earlier question about one of the respondents to your surveys. If you're an African fleeing war from the Sahel, or you're fleeing dictatorial governments in Eritrea or elsewhere, or Boko Haram, yes, to some people, Africa may look like hell. But if you're an African struggling to make ends meet, working 60-hour job in the diaspora, Africa is heaven. And so it's different experience for different people. However, there's some incredible examples. A good example is Ghana. I mean, we all know about the year of return, where the Ghanaian administration have encouraged not just the Africans, but also African Americans or anybody who associate themselves with the continent, encouraging them to return. And you know what that has done? It has created such a movement. The tourism sector has benefited hugely. Accra in December or in the summer is a hive of activities, cultural activities, there are tourism activities, just targeted,
right.
Targeting the diaspora. And this is Gambia, another example, and Frank mentioned Gabon. Gambia has been very creative in how they tap diaspora remittances. So they use diaspora remittance to hedge against their currency depreciation. And also they're working on a program how they can use the remittance to try and improve their sovereign rating. Right, and that's something creative. I don't think any other government has developed something like that. We speak about over 100 billion that is remitted by Africans annually to the continent, surpassing overseas development assistance.
All right, so we're going to take a short break now, and when we return, we'll continue our discussion on what African countries can do to attract their talented diaspora citizens back home. To stay with us. Welcome back to Talk Africa. Still with me are Frank Taka Ebang, Agnes Gitau, and Professor Dominic Mwenja. Let's now continue our conversation on what stops Africans in the diaspora from returning. Frank, let me come to you because we want to look at some solutions here. What policies do you think could realistically tip the balance in favor of a return? Is there any effort to try and lure the diaspora citizens back to use their expertise to fix the continent?
The time we live in is a time that, in fact, Africa as a continent realizes the necessity to have its diaspora working, for the continent, if not being back home. And I think some governments are taking those measures. I mentioned Gabon earlier. Agnes talked about Ghana, who is boosting tourists, by calling for the return of the entire African diaspora, right? The African diaspora, we have to look at the African diaspora by its extension that includes, African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, and even the Friends of Africa, right? Friends of Africa, those people out there that really sees Africa as a potential hub, for good life, and all these people can come back to the continent. It should be a global, if not a continental effort from the continent looking back to the diaspora as partners that definitely will help boost the continent's development efforts.
Right. So, Agnes, I want to come back to our online poll, and some of the other responses were related to the challenges in returning home. One was, of course, no skilled or unskilled person would want to return to Africa due to bad governance systems. Another interviewer said insecurity and unstable economies back home are the biggest challenges. You've mentioned that as well before in your discussion. How can African governments, though, address these concerns?
African governments must make it easier for the Africans at home to live comfortably. So they must make sure they have every African, whether abroad or at home, has access to security of life and property. We have to also ensure that we have basic public service, so healthcare, education, infrastructure. If Africa as a continent is is good enough for the Africans, they won't leave. Look, why would I want to go to a place where I don't speak a language, that I'm removed from my relatives? If I can have what I have in London, in Kenya, I'll be back tomorrow, Beatrice. What makes most of us, again, find it difficult, even though they're willing to return, find it difficult, is the issues that everyone has highlighted, is security concerns, lack of guarantee that after school you're guaranteed an opportunity to work, security of your life and your investment, just the basic. My late dad always reminded me that I was made in the continent and therefore I should not retire when I'm a burden to the economy. So I should return back home when I can contribute to Kenya's economy. And I think a lot of us feel that. We don't want to come back when we are of old age and we can't contribute in nation building. A lot of us want to return when we're economically active, but the system and infrastructure has to be right.
Agnes has talked a lot about the need for infrastructure, need for security, need for a conducive environment. From where you sit, though, Professor, what policies could realistically tip the balance in favor of a return?
Yeah, I think for me, the 10 years that I've been here, and part of what I've seen is our inability on this continent to have policies that are methodical and deliberate, and then fall through with those things that we intend to do. For example, some of the things that make it a little bit hard for us coming back to make investments, or those who want to come back to make investment, I'll list just a few. Limited access to capital, that's one. If you look at the structure of the economy that we have right now, especially in Kenya right now as we speak, where government borrowing is actually clouding out private capital. I mean, for private folks who want to go and get the loans and that from the banks for investments and all that, the bank would rather invest in a government bond than invest in myself. Because of the risk factor and all that. So those things have to be deliberate and methodical that allow people to access funding. They have ideas as they come back, but they need to access capital. That's number one. Number two, infrastructure issues. The cost of power in this country is totally unacceptable, and therefore manufacturers and people who are setting up industries are looking at the cost of power and they say that is way too much, and therefore I cannot be able to have 10, 15, 20% of my cost going into power. Right. Number three is unstable markets. So we have to figure out a way how do we stabilize our markets on the continent, right, through inter-Africa trade, through our export promotion and local market development and all that. Number three, and the most important, is corruption. Corruption is all over Africa, and most of the, and this is something that many people don't like to talk about, but it is true. Corruption does hurt businesses, and it does discourage people from coming to actually make investments in Africa. We have to deal with corruption with a very firm hand, such that when I come as an investor who's coming from the US and other places, right, I'm not too worried that the bureaucracy would be so corrupt that even if I have money to come and invest, it would be totally impossible. And I've seen many people come to different African countries, because I operate in different African countries, where people go, you know what, I was coming to invest. I didn't think I was going to be milked and turn around and run around. And we have to face that head on. There are no clear pathways in a lot of African countries to investment and entrepreneurship. And that comes now to policy, the right, issue of policy, policy frameworks that need to be. Some countries are trying. With Ethiopia, for example, they let their currency float, I think sometime mid last year. What they need now to do is more liberalization of forex regime, so that right, people can bring in their money, right, then be able to take out their money as they come. So there are many things that we can do on the continent to allow people who have, especially Africans, who have capital outside of the country, right, to come in and invest. We just have to figure out which policy framework, and whatever we say, we mean and do.
Right, so we're going to wind up in a moment, but Frank, I want to get your comment here. Gabon's president is urging its citizens to return home. What would it take for you personally to give up the diaspora life and move back home?
I have a hard time looking at the African diaspora in terms of what are you contributing, right? We shouldn't be And I certainly don't believe it's up to the African continent to ask the diaspora, what are you going to contribute? Because people left Africa for different reasons. We have to look at the African diaspora as an equal, powerful partner to the continent. Africans in a diaspora needs to be acknowledged. So we need to be acknowledged. We need to be validated. And I think being validated will serves as an incentive to Africans who so much want to go back home to do so, and those who just would rather contribute to the continent while being in a diaspora, which is something that is very much feasible. They can also do that. So as far as I'm concerned, I truly believe that the idea of setting up government policies that will allow the diaspora to have a voice in the Gabonese Congress is a step that will definitely allow the diaspora to contribute better. Right.
Agnes, your final comments?
I couldn't agree more with what Frank has said. You have to acknowledge and understand that we are a valuable asset for the continent. We love the continent. We left physically, but we never left. We are connected wherever we are. But in saying that, there's a lot of initiative, particularly with the central banks collecting data and measuring African diaspora contribution. But we cannot just be the tap that never runs dry. We have to be beyond remittance, and we are willing to be a valuable contributor to our countries and to the continent.
All right, Professor Mwanja, you have the final word.
I think for me, we have to look beyond remittances. We have to encourage our African brothers and sisters to come back home, bring their ideas, and those ideas need to be acted upon. And that environment needs to be created where those ideas are actually being incubated and become big things where they'll be able to change some industries. And I'll give you an example. As we speak now, I'm working with the group of friends that are from Germany. We are looking at how do we increase the efficiencies in the construction industry. So instead of having trucks that are bringing in sand and cement, we mix both in a mixer.
Right.
We package them. We earned some agents that we get from Germany, and it gives you a better quality product and a finish. Now, those are ideas that would come and change specific industries, right. And there are many Africans who are out there with such ideas. They need to come. We provide the right environment. We have the source of capital we can be able to get in this country. We encourage them to come and set up industries and productions in this country. Otherwise, we have become, unfortunately, a service economy in a lot of African countries prematurely. And when that happens, we get caught up in what we call the middle income trap, where we really never be able to take off because we are too busy selling something that somebody else is selling to us. Right. So we are trading ourselves, between ourselves, but we are not creating any value. We're just buying and selling. Textile, for instance, Betumba, we are selling. We are not creating value. Right. So we are busy trading with each other, but you are no manufacturing. So we need to encourage manufacturing and production on this continent so that we can be able to create those jobs, and the ecosystem around manufacturing creates a lot of other secondary jobs.
All right, thank you all very much for this discussion. But that's all we have time for on this edition of Talk Africa. A big thank you to our guests, Frank Taka-Ebang, linguist and international consultant, Agnes Gitau, managing partner at GBS Africa, focusing on economic and political risk, and Professor Dominic Mwanja, chairman of the Central Bank of Kenya Pension Fund and CEO of Myanmar International Foundation. Remember, you can be a part of this conversation online through our social media handles on Facebook and X. You can also catch the show on our YouTube playlist. Do keep the conversation going and join us again next week for more Talk Africa. From me, Beatrice Marshall, and the team here in Nairobi, until next time, it's goodbye.